Good evening, I'm John Yang. This afternoon, the Republican-controlled Texas State Senate voted largely along party lines not to remove embattled State Attorney General Ken Paxton from office. The Texas House had overwhelmingly voted to impeach him earlier this year. The Senate sat as a jury in the trial on charges the House had brought and had been deliberating since Friday. The Senate acquitted Paxton on 16 separate articles of impeachment, including bribery, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and abuse of the public trust. The charges center on Paxton's relationship with a wealthy donor. Afterward, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said it was all just politics.
This vote will be the vote you're remembered for most. Our members already knew that and have known that for the last 3 months. If only the House members who voted for impeachment would have followed that instruction in the House, we may not have been here. In the House, the vote to send the articles of impeachment against the Attorney General to the Senate happened in only a few days, with virtually no time for 150 members to even study the articles.
Paxton still faces a trial on felony securities fraud and an FBI investigation. Austin's American Statesman investigative reporter Tony Plohetsky is covering all of this. Tony, were you surprised by what happened this afternoon, or did you expect this?
We've known from day one that it was going to be a high hurdle to get this impeachment process across the finish line. And what I mean by that is that we've always assumed that 12 Democrats would generally vote in favor of those articles of impeachment. So when you look at it, it was really a trial for 9 Texas senators. That was the number needed to join with the Democrats to complete the impeachment process and to convict Ken Paxton on those articles. So given the fact that it was such a high burden to do that, I think on the ground here in Texas, particularly as we saw politics and the political machinery fire up, I think in many ways it is not a surprise to see the outcome that we saw this afternoon.
This afternoon, Mr. Paxton issued a statement. He blamed President Biden, and he blamed the Republican Speaker of the Texas House, who he called a liberal for all this, saying it's just politics. But these were serious charges, weren't they?
They were charges that included bribery, misusing his office, and this all dates back to allegations that were brought forward by 8 whistleblowers in the fall of 2020. People who sat at the right hand of Ken Paxton, top attorneys in his own agency who shared the same Christian conservative values, wanted to work side by side with Ken Paxton to push those values and to push that agenda forward. But again, what we saw in the end is that there is this feeling that House impeachment managers and prosecutors didn't really prove their case in terms of the contention that, yes, Ken Paxton did accept a bribe. He did benefit from helping a wealthy Austin investor who was also one of his campaign contributors.
So the evidence just wasn't there during the trial?
That seems to be the contention. It is noteworthy that as the trial was going on, the senators who were the jurors in this case were prohibited from making public statements. There was a gag order that had been in place for weeks. And so now we are going about the process of really getting their feedback, getting their public statement. What might they say with regard to how they voted and why they did or did not vote the way they did?
Ken Paxton's influence extends beyond the borders of the state of Texas. He's been a thorn in the side of Democratic presidents, a strong ally of Donald Trump. How is this going to affect his influence? How does this affect his standing?
In the minds of many political scientists, this is going to give Ken Paxton a broad license to double down on some of the deeply Christian conservative far-right agenda here in Texas, but again, beyond. And Ken Paxton speaking to that himself in his statement today, saying that the Biden administration should get ready, that he will continue to target their agendas and their policies, taking his work here in Texas and putting it on a national stage.
And politics aside, what's ahead for Ken Paxton in terms of courtrooms?
Well, certainly for Ken Paxton, this is a joyous day, a monumental day, a day of victory for him. But as you mentioned, Ken Paxton is far from out of the woods and far from being done in the courtroom. There are those 3 state security felony fraud charges that he is still facing. That is happening in Houston, and a judge in Harris County has said that she wants to try to get this case moving forward. It goes back 8 years. But in addition to that, we know through our own reporting that there is an ongoing federal investigation into Ken Paxton concerning these same allegations, or essentially these same allegations. And then last but not least, Ken Paxton is the subject of 2 ongoing complaints by the state bar of Texas, and whether or not he violated the terms of his license, his law license here in the state.
Tony Polahetsky of the Austin American-Statesman, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.